Wrestling Connection Podcast Network. Welcome into Wrestling Warzone, Monday Night Wars Podcast Retrospective Series. I'm JT, and joining me as ever is Arthur Smith loving, mustachioed madman from the South, Mr. Chad Campbell. How are you?
My Vince McMahon memorial mustache.
Oh, that's it?
I shaved the beard and decided to just leave it for this podcast only. It'll be gone.
That's a good decision that it's just for this podcast.
it'll be gone.
I'd probably kill that. Maybe during maybe you should do Rick Rude. I guess we do both shows back and forth now. But if you should have had it for Raw and then shaved it before Nitro,
right.
Good gimmick right there. Anyway, as you can tell, like we were just talking about, our gimmick on the show is that we are going through the history of the Monday Night Wars. We are in early 1997. Finally, it's been glorious to get out of 1996. We've been in a very WCW run. Lately, we covered Clash of Champions 2 episodes ago. Last episode, we covered Sold Out. We had a great turnout as far as listeners and viewers, so we appreciate everyone who checked that out, and hopefully you're sticking around to follow up on that, because this is we're going to be talking about the Nitro that occurred 2 nights later, and then the Raw to correspond with it. And be sure to subscribe if you're here, and if the first time you're watching, subscribe on YouTube. We have a lot of content on South Connection almost every day. We have fresh video content. We're also available on all podcast applications in audio form of this show and many other simulcasts. Plus, we have audio exclusive only shows. We have video exclusive. So just subscribe to both. You won't miss a thing. A lot of great content. Leave us a comment, leave us a like, and share around. So, Chad, what we started with the last time we were head-to-head on January 20th was recapping in real time. We feel like the Monday Night Wars really have kicked off now, officially in January of 97. Things are hot and heavy. We're both going to be, shows are going to be 2 hours very shortly. So actually, in the next week, right? This is our last 1 hour Raw. So another
last 1 hour Raw. So
yeah, this is it. Big milestone. So we're going to go back and forth while they're live. So we're going to alternate for the first hour. Raw segment, Nitro segment, Raw segment, Nitro segment, to get the feel of what it was like flipping back and forth. And then we'll close with the second hour of Nitro. But we are going to start with the first segment of Nitro because we are following the pay-per-view. So, Chad, I'm going to turn it over to you here. We're in Des Moines, Iowa. So we're staying Midwest and kicking things off.
Well, before we do that, I wanted to read this editorial by Wade Keller that was in the Torch. It's Torch 425. It's the same one that has the Sold Out review that we talked about a little bit on our last episode. But I thought this was a great article. It actually kind of sets the stage, I think, for the Monday Night Wars and where we're at. I think most of the points Wade hits on are both like accurate in the moment and become very like foretelling of what happens, and still it still seems relevant today with like WWE versus AEW. So I'm just gonna kind of read it. It'll take a little bit, but I think it's worth it because I thought it was the best. Like, you know, like sometimes so far we've had like back and forth editorials and stuff like that, but this one I thought was just awesome.
Okay, let's have it.
So it's called 31 Weeks and Counting. Losing the first week was embarrassing. The first week, Nitro went head-to-head with Monday Night Raw. Nitro beat Raw 2.5 to 2.3. WWF assumed the curiosity seekers would grow bored with WCW's inferior product and eventually settle in with the franchise Monday Night vehicle, Monday Night Raw. 32 weeks later, the two shows were neck and neck, with Nitro having the slight edge over Raw, having won the ratings battle 16 weeks and losing 15, plus one tie. The WWF had begrudgingly gotten used to having to battle it out for the swing viewers each week. Then 4 things happened over the course of 2 months, and Raw was cooked. First, May 27, 1996, Nitro expanded to 2 hours. The 1 hour lead-in gave them a distinct advantage over Raw since the head-to-head hour had a built-in audience. It swung the ratings in WCW's favor, but in the head-to-head hour, Raw was still close, even winning a few weeks. There was concern that WCW would be unable to fill the 2 hours with quality programming, and therefore the watered-down product would result in viewers watching 1 hour of Nitro, then switch into the WWF's only must-see hour of their programming schedule. WCW, though, had plenty to fill their 2 hour show thanks to the addition of Mexico's AAA talent. While they did not receive a lot of credit when people talk about Nitro's recent dominance on Mondays, The quarter-hour breakdowns of ratings show that the Mexican wrestlers often command the largest viewership on Nitro and readily beat big-name matchups on Raw. It gave Nitro an exciting new dimension and provided the action part of the successful Nitro equation. The third major change in Nitro was the shot heard around the wrestling world, the arrival of Scott Hall and later Kevin Nash onto the Nitro set. Not only did two of WWF's top 5 wrestlers jump ship, snatching away more WWF fans in the process, but they formed an organization called the NWO, purportedly independent of WCW. The NWO was a neat little idea at first, but soon it became the hippest concept in wrestling and the hottest angle perhaps of all time. The NWO concept was so hip and so successful, Hulk Hogan wanted in. Hogan's heel turn became the fourth major turning point that solidified Nitro's dominance over Raw. There's been no looking back. Since Hogan's heel turn, Nitro has beat Raw in every head-to-head matchup, the closest margin being 2.6 to 2.3. For 31 straight weeks, Nitro has dominated Raw in the ratings. They not only win the head-to-head hour, but recently well over half of Raw's audience has been turning into Nitro when Raw concludes. That means the WWF is bringing fans to the television screens on Monday night who might not tune in if it was just WCW on the air, and then those WWF faithful are tuning into WCW after Raw. And some of those people are buying NWO t-shirts, attending arena events, calling the WCW 900 number, and buying WCW pay-per-views. Every time Vince McMahon thought he had an answer, WCW had a counter move. Day after the Royal Rumble, Bret Hart quit the WWF. WCW counter-programmed by bringing back Randy Savage after several months off. When McMahon brought back Bret Hart, the Sting angle overshadowed it. When Raw moved its time slot up an hour, Nitro was ready to make the first hour seem important by turning into NWO Nitro. They never had to do it because Nitro won the ratings battle without it. The WWF could only handle so much humiliation. McMahon was left with no choice but to either accept defeat in the Monday Night War and take pride in being more profitable than the salary cap bursting WCW, or fire back in a big way. This week, he decided to fire back in a big way. He decided to play by WCW's rules, expand to 2 hours, and go live at major arenas across the country. Make Raw seem like as much a special event as Nitro. Make the choice for fans more difficult. Besides the 4 additions to Nitro already listed, Nitro in general beat Raw from the standpoint of atmosphere. Raw was run the traditional way, cut back on expenses by taping 4 shows at once and run smaller buildings. Traditional television tapings have been lost leaders, but the reason TV tapings were write-offs in the past don't apply to today's world. TV tapings used to feature mostly squash matches meant to establish the name personalities and whet viewers' appetite to see the big names face each other at their local arenas. WCW has managed to turn that whole concept around. Their most profitable show have become the TV tapings known as Monday Nitro. Even with the $50,000 give or take it costs for the satellite truck to be on hand for the live broadcast, and even with the thousands of dollars in satellite time and for the extra crew, WCW is making money at Nitro some weeks. Plus, with the ratings they are getting, they are making money on advertising. And that doesn't even count the bounty points being scored with Turner executives. It makes headlines in trade papers in USA Today when TNT beat perennial champ USA Network for the first time in the 1996 ratings battle. WCW is mentioned as one of the primary reasons. WCW going for the red ink stepchild to the darling of Turner's empire translated to more bad news for the WWF. The more valuable WCW seems to TBS, the more perks that it will be sent their way. Bigger budget for TV, looser purse strings for talent, more time spent pushing for leverage when it comes to cable and syndicated clearances, not to mention more mainstream media articles on WCW as the general public catches up the concept that WCW is number one. And it is that last line, perhaps more than anything, that drove McMahon to make a move that deep down he still thinks is bad for the industry. When the buy rate for the Royal Rumble came in around 50 to 30% behind Starrcade of just a few weeks earlier, and when Nitro creamed Raw on January 20th, a date circled as the night Raw finally had the deck stacked in their favor, and when Nitro at Chicago's United Center nearly packed the place and set an all-time record for WCW's gate and brought in comparable money to what WrestleMania would draw across town at the Rosemont Horizon in a few months, well, it all painted a picture, and people were noticing. Many industry followers were declaring the shift in the balance of power official. WCW was wrestling's top company. WCW had overtaken the WWF in virtually every major category since perhaps overall profitability. Cable ratings, syndicated ratings, pay-per-view buy rates, and mass media attention all shifted to WCW. WCW closed the gap tighter at arena shows, overseas tours, and merchandising. All this happened since Monday Nitro began 17 months ago. McMahon, in his heart, is still convinced he is the superior promoter, but his list of excuses for losing on Mondays became irrelevant. No one was listening anymore. Raw can no longer lose and blame it on being pre-taped or being only 1 hour. After all, WCW can no longer counterplan Nitro against pre-taped Raws. In the last few days, since rumors started of this move, the most often brought up issue is whether the WWF's roster is deep enough to support 2 hours of programming. Sure, it is. Is it as deep as WCW's roster? No, but WCW arguably has gone overboard. Also, the WWF is willing to build an hour of television around 1 or 2 elaborately hyped matches, while WCW caters to the MTV attention span of 3 minutes per match, rapid fire pacing. The WWF is use of AAA talent, which can help fill some time. They need to pick and choose which wrestlers they use and then actually make them distinguishable from one another. Hector Garza is a good place to start. If they establish a working agreement with All Japan or another Japanese promotion, too bad for them that WCW already snatched up an agreement with the exciting Michinoku Pro Group. That would add more depth. WCW has already conditioned the national audience to accept non-American wrestlers. The WWF ought to take advantage of the road WCW has paid. McMahon knows that he has expended 2 hours just before WCW debuts their first major acquisition in months, Kurt Hennig. The WWF is working on some major surprises of their own, and perhaps we're confident in making this move now because they do have a trick or two up their sleeve. Will Eric Bischoff panic? No, in fact, for him, this is a new challenge. He sees it as an opportunity to beat the WWF under even tougher circumstances, adding to the stripes on his sleeve. For wrestling fans, 4 hours of live wrestling on Monday nights might seem daunting, if not overwhelming, but the quality of the two shows will be better because of it. The competition will continue to drive and inspire both sides to try new approaches and take more chances. Had Raw instead moved to Thursday, both shows would have resorted to the captive audience mentality and slowed down the pace and quality of the programming and taken fewer chances. The WWF's primary fear in making this move is that it will kill off pay-per-view and house show business. Every tenet of wrestling wisdom points that direction, yet Nitro in the past 17 months has blown all logic out the window. Exciting wrestling makes people want to spend money on wrestling. The WWF just made wrestling more exciting. So great. I think mic drop type article. I don't any thoughts on that. I didn't see anything that I vehemently disagreed with. I'd say the only thing that kind of doesn't come to pass is the use of the AAA talent with
Right.
WWL, but not a
And they
bad.
do end up getting Michinoku Pro later in the year, after ECW. But no, I mean, it's spot on. It explains why. And I thought the most interesting part was it said like Vince is doing what he thinks is bad. Like
Yeah,
he doesn't think it's a good move, right? To go to 2
right.
hours live and and pour on, and they're still doing it today, right? So they ended up
Yeah,
sticking with it because they ended up conditioning the audience as such. But it definitely made things a lot tougher for them, no doubt, to have to churn out that much content regularly with that level of quality match, and eventually has, become not even eventually, pretty soon after this, became really tough to maintain, especially once they added SmackDown and then the stakes went up even higher. It becomes an arm race. I think one of my biggest takeaways from that article is the insanity of WCW being dead within 2 years of that article being written for all intents and purposes. Like,
yeah.
by mid '99, it's not recognizable as a head-to-head competitor for WWF. I mean, and that's you're reading this, and it's like a death song for WWF. Like this is like a last hurrah to try and go to 2 hours. And yeah, it'll improve, but WCW is killing them, right? They've surpassed them in everything, or tied them in places you never thought they would tie them. If you would have said to Wade, like, hey, within 2 years, like this whole thing is going to be turned upside down again, maybe he would have said, well, yeah, that makes sense. It's Vince, but everything, the momentum just seems so heavy toward WCW. It's crazy just how, I don't want to call it a botch, just as how badly it goes sideways for them.
Oh, I mean, it's definitely a botch. I mean, this is the only time since the national expansion in 1983 that I mean, and you see it some in 1998 when they first become profitable, but they keep spending too. And then by 1999, it's just, they're hemorrhaging everything. They're losing ratings. They're overspending. It's a huge botch, because you're seeing it. Like, that was one thing with that United Center Raw. Like, they were packing the attendance. Like, you look now, like, if you want to bring it modern day, like with AEW versus WWE, I mean, WWE still has such a huger market share in general. Like, AEW is profitable, probably. We don't know, but I would think so to some degree.
Well, you can't compare too, because TV rights deals are such a big driver. Back then, they were paying for time.
Yeah,
like
they say
they
that.
were
That's
paying USA for the
that
time.
article.
Yeah, and then they were, they were paying for the TV time and then getting paid back through advertising. I think things shift for WWF in like I want to say it's 05 when they go back to NBC.
When they go back to USA,
USA, where they say, okay, you're going to pay us, and then you keep the advertising. So that's when that whole thing starts. So it's such a hard comparison, because back then they were paying for the time.
Well, I think the rights fees and all that now is where you get the same argument where, like, maybe now, like in WWE Creative's head or Tony Khan's head, like, it may not necessarily be the best for the product that we're having to produce.
Right.
Essentially 5 hours of content on both sides. Like, I would include NXT, because there's so much crossover now. So it's 5 hours a week of content, or no, it's 6 hours on WWE's side, because we're all 3 hours. So 6 versus 5.
NXT is 2 hours. So it's 7.
Oh yeah, 7. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of content they're having to create, but you look at like the rights and fees and all that, they're still getting revenue for that. And when you compare it, like what, as bad as when we're taping this, like Collision's number was really awful the first week of college football, but that same week last year, or on the first week of college football, TNT wasn't even in the top 150 on the cable ratings. So it's like,
and Raw it wasn't like the lowest rating ever against the opening Monday night game, and
second lowest rating ever, right?
And they're about to get $300 million from Amazon or Disney for SmackDown. It's like,
it looks like they're in some sort of, there'll be competitive bids for their services. So it's interesting. It's interesting how that still like pays in today. Like, the business has definitely changed from like, all right, well, let's just get them to the arena in an arena setting, to now it's like, we'll take a dive on content just because we have these revenue streams. Like we know we can't be as tight and focused with so much content, but we're not.
And that's going to ramp up even more with Endeavor and all that. I mean, that's a whole other podcast for another time. But it's an interesting article. I'm glad you read it. I think it sums up where we're at in the war. I mean, this is the final 1 hour old school Raw. We've been talking about it for forever. Like, we're getting there. We're here on our next episode. We're in the first 2 hour Raw. We're not in the war zone yet, but we're in the 2 hour Raw.
Yeah.
And then we're just a few weeks away from, Raw's war versus Nitro. And that's where we head for the next couple of years, at least,
Yeah. And I think it was good a way just to show like how this, it's not necessarily things that are mutually exclusive, like Vince expanding to 2 hours in 1997. It could have been kind of a desperate act, but that doesn't mean it's a bad one. It's exciting for the fan, which he spells out here, which I just thought it was articulated really well, and kind of sets the scene. So saying all that, are we ready to dive in?
Yeah, you want me to do this opening segment? You want us to break, or are you good?
I'm good. I'm good.
Right,
I was fired up about that. I love it. Right. This has been my favorite thing reading, because we have no podcast or nothing from that time.
Right. Yeah. That's all we have is these articles. Yeah.
Retrospective. So that felt like, like what you would see now on like a Wade Keller hotline or on Twitter when you get the recap from Trevor Dane or whoever. So we are in Des Moines, Iowa. Hogan as face is still in the opening, of course. But we do get a little departure where as soon as we come into the arena, Eric leads us in. Eric Bischoff, a holdover from Sold Out. So Eric leads us in, welcoming us to NWO Monday Nitro. and it's Eric Bischoff, Hall, and Nash in the booth. I'll just say right up front, we talked about how kind of one of the biggest mistakes in Sold Out was how de-emphasized the outsiders were on that show.
Yep.
They're pretty prominent here.
Yeah, they definitely made up for it. I don't know if that was their original plan, was to say like, okay, I don't know. I don't get the Sold Out booking, honestly. Like we talked about it, I guess a lot of Sold Out. Like a lot of it just didn't make sense. Like they didn't showcase their strengths. It's almost like they were, I guess maybe in their minds they were trying to set up the NWO as a brand. So they're like, okay, we're going to show off the depth, and instead at this show, versus like let's play the strengths and get the guys everyone want to see out there. But that's how we start tonight. Yeah, like you said, it's Bischoff, Hall, Nash, NWO Nitro, Des Moines. Like they're starting things off like it's their show.
Right. So he talks about the pay-per-view. He keeps saying last night, even though it's 2 nights ago. So a little slip up there.
Hard habit to break.
Not used to the Saturday night. And he talks about the misjustice of what happened in the tag title match. So they do show a clip. Now, this I thought was a funny clip where they show Hall giving the Outsiders edge and having like a long count while Nick Patrick was away. Hall says that could have been a 20 count. The finish does get shown. Hall claims he had his shoulder up, which is a funny thing when he's completely laid out. Eric calls it the greatest injustice ever done in the sport. Randy Anderson is in the ring. He's officiating the first match on Nitro. Eric calls him to the announce booth. So Randy Anderson comes out of the ring, jogs down. Hall says, "Come here, you goof." When he gets up there, Hall kind of paintbrushes, slaps him around a little bit. Eric asks what he was thinking. He says, and Randy Anderson has an amazing Southern accent.
Oh God, yeah, deep stuff.
One after my own heart. So he says he was reffing in WCW. The promoter gave him a ticket. Which I was like, who is this? Gary Juster or whoever?
Right.
Eric asked how much did he pay, so wanting to know what the market was going for these tickets. Randy says it was a gift. So Eric then brings up the company policy on receiving gifts, says ignorance is not an excuse. You cannot accept freebies of any kind. Randy says, I was just doing my job. And then Eric brings up that he knows it's been a tough year. Randy says, yeah, with the cancer. And Eric says, I know it's been a tough year, but you've left me with no choice, and you were by here terminated. And as soon as he says terminated, the Outsiders laugh is so degrading. Like they bust out laughing.
They call him a loser,
jabroni. Yeah, get out of here, you loser. And then Eric shifts that, calls out the Steiner brothers. The Outsiders stand up. Here come the Steiner brothers out. Hall calls them two goose too. They get close to kind of the announce area. Eric tells them to stay right there. Dillinger and security's in between them. Eric says that they received gratis. Hall says that's too complicated a word for him.
Dumb it down.
To leave the belts here. Scott says, yeah, we are the champs. Eric lets us know he's the highest ranking WCW official, and they must leave the belts here or they will be in breach of contract. Hall constantly is like spouting off and Rick, he keeps saying, hey, dogface. Hey, dogface.
I want your belt. I want his belt.
Dogface, I want yours.
I want your belt, Dogface.
Dogface, I want yours. So Scott and Rick both throw the belts on the ground. Eric says they'll be fine for that action. The Outsiders lift up the belt. Nick Patrick's in the announce booth, kind of, pointing at the belts and giving them a glam up. And that's pretty much how we end our first segment. So what did you think? I thought this was great. All this I loved. I mean, it's a dusty finish from the pay-per-view, but it is one that, like, immediately when it happened at the pay-per-view, like,
you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
They were basically saying it. They weren't hiding it. They were like, we're going to fix this. We're going to get it right. And no, this was awesome. It's a super memorable angle, like at night. A segment like this is one I think anyone who's like dialed in during this time remembers. I love Hall is constantly trying to interject the whole time, just like little comments all throughout this. Yeah, Bischoff saying it's company policy. You can't receive gifts for their employees. Payola, it's a freebie. And it goes, I'll just do my job. And Hall goes, the Steiners are doing the job. That was another great line by him in there. Anderson mentions his battle with cancer, which Bischoff brought up. He goes, I know it's been a tough year. And then Bischoff goes, I don't want to hear about your personal problems.
Yeah.
Which is just great. Just such a great smarmy asshole boss. So he fires him. Anderson says mumbling about his children. But it kind of came off like Milton in Office Space here. You know, like, but my children, you know, and they're like basically laughing at him, like a loser, jabron. The Steiners come out, and I love him dumbing it down, like you said, like the gratis. Randy Anderson was fired for gratis. You got to dumb it down. And yeah, all the comments are great. Bischoff is he's like, hand him over. We're running low on time. We're going to get moving. And the Steiners capitulate, which, like, it's interesting to me. You'd think they put up more of a fight. Actually, I thought they kind of looked a little bit like bitches. Like, not only do they hand the titles over, he tells them, go to the ring or you're going to breach your contract, go wrestle. And they just walk to the ring to wrestle. Like, they could have had him to say F you, or like, we're not wrestling, or we got no brawl security and cuffed and dragged out of the arena. It looked a little bit more badass. I'd say that's the only weakness in this. The Steiners kind of look like pussies because they kind of just give in to Bischoff. Hall being all sad that the belt was broken when Rick threw it down, which is they both threw him down. And they said, "Oh, just go beat these jabronis." But it was awesome. I thought this is, you know, the idea, the concept of a dusty finish is maligned often in wrestling, but there's times it works, and like this was a perfect time for it. Like the war is not even close to being over. WCW hasn't turned the tide. You don't really need the Steiners to have won the tag titles that sold out. It was enough to show that they could, that the troops are coming together, that Anderson took a stand, but the belt's getting, you know, jerked back to the outsiders. I think is actually a way better story than the Steiners winning the belt. So I think this was like really well executed and made a lot of sense to go this way. So it's a great segment. It's an all-time, you know, if you're ranking them, I mean, this is a project for us at the end of this, but rank the all-time Monday Night Wars moments. Like this is probably top half, like, you know, whatever. I don't know if it's top 10 or 15 by the end, but I'd say it's pretty high. It's up there. Maybe top 50 of the war. It's up there.
Yeah.
God, you just gonna be starting now. I just sparked the next stretch project for next year. Maybe the greatest moments of the Monday Night War from either side.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, yeah, great segment. So now we're not done with WCW yet, though, on the head-to-head, right? We're staying.
No, it goes right into the first match, which is the Faces of Fear versus the Steiner brothers. Eric lets us know on commentary a World Tag Team title match was advertised, and they're going to back it up. The Outsiders will defend the title tonight. So this I thought turned into a pretty good power matchup, kind of the two Hoss teams. We get a power slam from Rick to Ming. You know, all on commentaries talking about how they beat both these teams. Barbarian, I thought, looked pretty nasty. Like he's been looking great lately.
Yeah.
He hits a nice sidewalk slam. Hall gives him credit and says that any match with the Faces of Fear is tough. Then I thought this was an interesting comment. He says, you know, a little behind the curtain, he talks about how like people say Ming's the toughest person in, you know, wrestling, but he thinks Barbarian's the one that carries the team, which it's a little weird. Sherry,
Nash doesn't talk a lot either in that. Like,
no,
Hall really is the one like chirping all night. But Nash does get a couple of his cervic lines, so I'll get another one in a second. But he it was interesting that Hall was really doing a lot of the talking.
Yeah, because they show Sherry and Harlem Heat in the crowd just sitting there watching the match. Hall says this is a long way from Houston. A nasty splash. This was kind of like one of those botches that happens, but it actually looks better where like Rick Steiner, Ming was on the top rope. Rick Steiner sits up right as Ming dies, and he still makes contact. So he almost makes contact on the splash with the back of Rick's neck and back. It looked really gross. And then Hall sends a big shot to Sags. He talks about Shreveport, and he says, "Yeah, you tell that toothless punk we will meet again. You get your doctor's release, and we'll go." So
and Bischoff's just like, "All right, let's move on.
Let's put that behind us." He says, "Probably
he doesn't want to risk any more lawsuits."
No. So the face of the fear, the double top headbutt. Scott has to break up the pin. Top rope belly to belly gets tried by Barbarian, but Rick falls on top and he doesn't go over. Then Barbarian misses a boot. Rick's able to hit the back suplex from his knees. Good power move there. Scott gets the hot tag. That looks great. Butterfly suplex. Hall kind of calls Scott Steiner a dummy. Scott gets the belly to belly on Ming, and that picks up the win. The crowd was hot for it. So again, like this is, I would say this is one of your Steiner matches around this time. Like it's clunky. It has some weird parts to it, flow wise, but the throws are there. The commentary was fun. A lot of good stuff going on. So I went 2.5. I enjoyed it for what it was.
And I love the bravado of the Outsiders too, because they're not going to fight like a real team, but they, like we want to defend, like we could have taken the Steiners. They're always talking. Nash is quiet, but the few lines he gets are tremendous. He makes a Dunkin' Donuts joke, and references the Dunkin' Donuts guy. If you remember the dude, the time to make the donuts guy, from the commercials.
Time to make the donuts, yes.
And he says referee Scott Dickinson and the Dunkin' Donuts guy have the same derby, which is just a great line. Like he could have just said he looks like him, he's fat like him, but the same derby is such a great friggin' way to put it. And then when they show Harlem Heat and Sherry, Hall says a thing about Houston, and Nash goes, "I thought they were dead," which is just another. It's such a stupid random line, but. Hall says Scott gained 30 pounds and he's fresh because he sat around for 6 months, and then he gets into the Shreveport stuff. Hall says they need to recruit more wrestlers and refs to the NWO. Hall calls Rick Robbie, says Robbie's the weak link. And then, the finish is good with the overhead belly to belly. I like this. There's the usual heavy offense. It was a little slow pace, but everything hit. The NWO commentary always carries these along as well when they're on. Hall's just on fire. It was sloppy in a good way, and gave the Steiners the win. Like I said, I thought they were a little bit pussies with Bischoff, but at least they win here clean. So I went 2 3/4 on this match. It's right in my tag team Haas wheelhouse.
Nice.
No doubt. Okay. All right. So we're going to head over to Raw now. We'll get the opening segment of this. We open with a recap of last week's Wild Ride with Bret Hart and Steve Austin. And that set up the Final Four match officially at In Your House to determine the next number 1 contender who will challenge Shawn Michaels for the title. Right after that, we then get our opening animation. Did you catch where they were? I didn't seem to note it down here.
No.
They must still be in.
They're in the same place they were.
Beaumont? I think it was Beaumont.
Beaumont. Yeah. That sounds right.
All right. We get to our opening match, which is Ahmed Johnson taking on Crush. Ahmed struts out. Vince and King hype up the show. They talk about the big heel turn over the weekend. As Savio Vega has turned on Ahmed Johnson at Madison Square Garden. He joined the Nation. It was a tag match, Farouk and Crush against Savio and Ahmed, so he helped Farouk win. King says Ahmed's weekend could turn out like the Patriots' weekend. Of course, got beaten in the Super Bowl by the Packers. We get a replay from MSG. Then the whole Nation, except Farouk and Savio, come out with Crush. We then get clips from the Nation trying to attack Sid on shotguns. So they had a very busy weekend here. I think we're in peak Nation stretch here now. They're going to be on a lot. Crush attacks her behind on the floor with a distraction, works away in the back. Ahmed gets a power slam. Vince says, no one in the world can stop Ahmed when he explodes. Ahmed hammers Crush. He moves through some offense. Crush stumbles around. Ahmed misses an elbow drop. Crush takes over to belly and some chokes. We get plenty more talk about MSG. Savio's heel turn. Crush hooks a very lazy body scissors. Farouk is in the aisle to watch. After a break, Ahmed breaks the hold. He falls back and powers out of it. Crush remains in control. He still goes after the back as Vince talks about Hunter Helmsley and his new butler, Curtis. Ahmed drop kicks Crush as he comes off the middle rope and then dumps him to the floor. Crush ties up the ref, and out comes Farouk. He beats down Ahmed, whips him into the steps, and back inside, Crush hits a heart punch to win the match over Ahmed Johnson. Not much doing here at all. When you compare these two segments, it's a tough comp. We get a couple of glimmers from Ahmed, but Crush just stinks. Surprising win. I guess the numbers game is the story, but I was shocked that they had Crush beat Ahmed pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say clean, but fairly clean. He pinned him. So I went 1.5 on this opener.
Yeah, Crush, I think, is officially overtaken my mantle of the person I hate the most on both shows combined. Because we're not seeing a whole lot of Duggan or Wall Street, really, or Hugh Morris. Hugh Morris has actually been pretty good, as we'll get to later.
Yeah, he's been okay.
He's on the upswing. Crush, I just think sucks, and I gotta be honest, like this whole feud's not doing much for me either. Like something with Ahmed coming back, I kind of like it's pretty prominent on this Raw. They cut back as you'll get to. And I was just thinking watching this episode, I was like, I really just don't care anymore. Like,
yeah.
I get it. Like, it's almost like the same theory in some ways as NWO is like the numbers game. Like, if Ahmed gets his hands on Farouk, but I don't know.
That time off really cooled him. Like,
yeah,
he was not even the full time off. He was hurt. It is what it is. And Farouk didn't even join the Nation until November. But it just felt like that burn from the debut of the Nation till the Rumble really kind of dragged this out to where it feels like it's already been going on forever. We haven't even had a singles match with these two guys, you know?
Well, the Rumble.
Yeah, I guess, but like a single
like a blow off.
Yeah, like a big match, you know.
Well,
that was like a quick sprint, a DQ. So that was almost more like a segment than a match.
We got a ways to go too. So that I think also is hurting me in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh boy. So yeah, I mean, I didn't think anything was very interesting here, especially Crush's offense. There's somebody wearing the NWO shirt right in the front row of Raw, which is just kind of alarming to see. Spanish announce booth is there for this taping. That seemed a little odd.
Maybe because they're in Texas or something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, not much going on here as far as the match. I only want a star. Like it, I thought it didn't go a long time, but it did go through one commercial break, and it went a little long for me. So not the best opening.
No, I mean, it's like I want to. They started with Ahmed, and Ahmed's hot, so like I don't want to bash him too much because it's not like they started with like a flat, random match, which they've done at times, right? They've like rolled out Freddie Joe Floyd and whoever. Like they actually opened with like their. I would argue Ahmed Nation is like a top 3 feud for them. So they started with a piece of that. Ahmed is hot. It's just that Crush sucks. So it's like the problem with the Nation is they have no workers right now because like. I think that's why they probably turned Savio. He was dead in the water as a face, and they probably looked at him as like, okay, we kind of need like a workhorse guy in the Nation right now, and you know, not that he is for us, but in their mind, I'm sure he was. Farouk hasn't quite figured it out back in the ring. You know, Ron Simmons still struggling. Crush is worthless. So it's like, what do we? You know, we need someone that can wrestle matches, right?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the article. Like this isn't the best prospect for 2 hours if this is kind of what's rolled out. So now we go back to Nitro. When they left to commercial break, they had the NWO bumper music. When we come back, Tony and Larry are in the booth, so they kind of reset everything. Your usual stuff here. Larry calls it the New World Order.
The New World Order. He says they live by the code of the married man. Deny, deny, deny.
Yeah. I thought this was a good touch from Tony where he says good things did happen at Sold Out for WCW, but because it was presented by the NWO, they can't show the footage. They do show some stills of the ladder match.
Some photos we can show.
So they show Eddie winning that. They also show Dallas Page accepting the NWO shirt and then doing the diamond cutter. Tony lets us know it's below 0 weather and there's snow outside, but it's warm inside the arena with all the action that's going on. And that leads us to Roadblock versus the Giant. Roadblock attacks before Giant even steps into the ring. Chops by Roadblock. He gets hit with a huge clothesline in the corner. Giant charges in, eats a big boot. Roadblock goes for a slam. That gets blocked. Giant's able to slam him. Crowd's into this one. And then when Roadblock gets up from the slam, Giant hits an incredible drop kick. Roadblock takes a huge bump to the outside through an announce table. Now they try to say like this is like the second table that sometimes they announce. I mean, it's in a different position from one they've ever announced.
It was clearly just set up for this.
But you know, it looked cool, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Giant rolls Roadblock back in the ring, hits the choke slam, and that's it. So I mean, this is a 2-minute match, but crowd was into it. Had a cool spot. Hoss, a lot of Hoss action. I thought it made the Giant look violent. So for a 2-minute match, I thought it was successful. To me, that's on like this match actually had me thinking about like how Aaron George rates matches, and I'd be interested to see what he put this on his scale. And almost
2.5. I guess it's a 2.5.
That's what I almost stole. I almost stole it, but I'm kind of a prig. But I did think it was fun for when it lasted, so I went 2.
I just went with the standard 1, but I mean, it was a good little squash. Giant needed the dominant clean win. Like he's had a tough couple of weeks here. He needed to remind everyone that he comes out and he just destroys guys. That's what we needed to see more of. So I was glad about that. That we got to see him be reestablished. So he does get the mic after. He says he's a fire-breathing giant. He's still alive. And he vows to take the title home. He wants another match tonight with Hogan. So it's like our 3rd straight week, right? We had the Robin Hood one, then we had Sold Out, now we got here. So he's wants another title shot.
Yeah, he's been issuing the challenge, and Hogan's been accepting. But this is kind
of to Hogan's credit, he's accepted them all. So all right, let's go back to Raw. We get a break, and then clips of Ahmed and Crush. Shawn Michaels then hears to the ring. We hear some "We Want Shawn" chants. I don't know if they were piped in or if they directed them to chant them before we came back from break, maybe kind of thing. Let's all chant "We Want Shawn." Vince gets in the ring for a chat. He talks about the past year for Shawn and his whole dream and coming true. But on February 13th, on Thursday, Raw Thursday, Shawn has to have his rematch with Sid. Shawn says it's no longer a dream, but a reality, and everyone knows that Sid and Shawn have a strange relationship. Sid gave him a shot, and Shawn will return the favor. Vince and Shawn talk about Final Four and the options of if he beats Sid, who will face him at WrestleMania. Shawn says Brett's not happy with him. Austin's not happy with anybody. And then you have Undertaker and Vader, who are 2 monsters. It's all about the WWF title, which brings out the best and the worst. Vince brings out Bret Hart as well. He tells Shawn to do whatever he has to do to get to WrestleMania as champion, because he's the one that'll stand tall at Final Four. And he wants Shawn in the ring for the belt. No injuries and at 100%. Vince asks Bret if he's overlooking Sid. Bret says he won't discredit Sid, but he's rooting for Shawn, and he'll watch his back to ensure it if needed. Out comes The Undertaker. Taker says Bret earned his respect at the 1996 Royal Rumble, a rare dip back in history for this company at this point. But he's sick of hearing about him being screwed out of the title. He says the belt is his because he got screwed back at that show. He sat back too long, but it's time for the belt to come to the dark side. He'll be the hunter and the hunted, and puts him at Shawn. Will take on Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. He can give his soul to the Lord because the belt and the body belong to The Undertaker. Out comes Steve Austin. He stomps out. King is giddy to see him. He stops in the aisle where Jim Ross pops up. And Austin says he recognizes an ambush, and all he sees in the ring, and this is a pretty classic Austin line, are 3 crybabies and Little Boy Blue, because that's Vince is wearing his blue suit. He says they all just sit and piss and moan, but at Final Four, he'll take his opportunity at no DQ, and he'll throw their asses out again and take out Shawn too. Austin goes to leave, but Vader and Paul Bearer are standing behind him. So he says, fuck it. And he goes, I'll go to the ring instead. So he turns and heads to the ring. He balks a bit and then goes back. He walks past Vader, who Vader kind of barks at him. Just a great segment. I mean, to me, Austin was on fire here. The highlight of all this. I thought Shawn came off a little bit more real. I know we struggle with him at times. Bret has, made his intent clear. Taker, good to see him fired up again about the title. The 3 crybabies and Little Boy Blue line's great. So I thought this was a really good hard sell for both Thursday, Raw Thursday, and Final Four, which we talked about WCW's big week with Nitro, Clash, and Sold Out. We're getting one for WWF as well. Like, we're going to get Thursday, Raw Thursday, and Final Four right on the heels of it. So they have a big week coming as well. And they're hyping both things at once. And I thought they did it well here. Like, I think if you're a fan, you're coming out kind of excited for that week out of this segment. You're thinking, okay, we got a big title match on Raw, and then, the big match to determine who's going to get the Mania title match on pay-per-view.
I'm lower on this than you. I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't think it was really good either. I mean, it was serviceable. It just didn't have much for me on the memorable side besides the Little Boy Blue line. I thought Undertaker saying like that the Hitman, he earned his respect with the Rumble. It's like, all right, like this 30-minute terrible match is what.
Well, he took up to the limit.
Okay. No, I mean, this was fine, but I did think this was more generic. It part of it could be Shawn issues, but also it's still, I mean, we're still marching towards Shawn versus Bret here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
It
it's
was
obvious we're
funny.
still headed that way. And I mean, take or sit anyway, non-title. I guess that was probably in the works. It seems like it, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. So
So Brett, Sean, take or sit, Austin Bulldogs, kind of still where we're at.
right. All right. Back to Nitro. Oh, also one other quick thing. Vader, I thought looked. I mean, I don't know. He was literally just like standing at the Raw lettering and
Yeah.
come to jump. So not great. Back to Nitro. Jeff Jarrett versus Eddie Guerrero. I thought this was kind of savvy booking that you could say if you wanted to get real like inside baseball. Like you could say that these were two of the only people that won
Mm,
from WCW side the night
yep.
before, and now Bischoff puts them against each other.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of cool. Now whether they thought of that or not, but whatever. Good action between these two in my mind. Eddie flips out of the monkey flip on his feet. That looks great. Tony says they have a big surprise they're going to show later, something they've located.
Larry
Jared,
wants to hush, hush, don't spoil a surprise.
right. Jarrett hits a swinging neck breaker to gain the advantage. Jarrett is definitely working heelish here. He points to the head to show how smart he is. So we kind of had some back and forth. Like Jarrett, is he a face? Is he a heel? It feels like he's pretty heel now. Unless he's facing somebody straight from NWO. So he kind of toes that line. Brainbuster from Eddie calls for the frog splash. One thing I liked about this match was you kind of had with Jarrett working heelish, you had a good contrast because if you watch this match, his strikes are mostly punches, technically an illegal move. Eddie, when he comes back, he fires back with a European uppercut,
Right.
legal strikes. That I don't think is an accident. I think that shows like Eddie Guerrero is a great worker. So Jarrett catches him in the superplex. He calls for the figure four, and out comes Deborah dragging Mongo down the aisle. So Jarrett is punching Eddie in the corner. Eddie kind of reverses, and Mongo's on the apron with the Halliburton. And Mongo whacks Jarrett instead of Eddie with the Halliburton. He kind of yells at Deborah. Larry has a funny line where he says, Steve finally put some pants on.
Yeah.
Relationship. Jarrett wins by DQ. So Jarrett then rolls to the outside, and Deborah rushes over and raises his hand in a funny moment, too. And then Deborah and Mongo leave with the camera following them. Deborah says, wait till we get home tonight. And Larry again has a line where he says, that's why you keep them in the kitchen.
That's right. Out of Nitro.
Yeah,
Him and
Larry,
Gene have thoughts about women ruining Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart's another big one. Women
there's
ruining.
a lot of women slander on this Nitro. But as a match, I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it told a good story for what it was, and these are. I mean, Eddie's 97 is off to a good start, which it is kind of like for US wise in a lot of ways his breakout year. Like, I mean, he done stuff in 95, 96. If you were really in tune with ECW, I think you could say 95, but I mean, we'd seen him like he's building to his resume, and I thought this was a good match to pad it out. I went 3 stars. Very fun TV match.
Yeah, it was a very good TV match for sure. Fun one on paper too, and they've been two of the consistent best on Nitro. Like they're two of the guys that we really enjoy every time they're on. Almost like we've been talking Jarrett up since his debut, and Eddie's since we started this project, Eddie's been our guy. And Tony hyping the surprise, a couple nice spots from Eddie with I mean a couple nice hope spots from Eddie when Jarrett's working him over. I thought those were good. The superplex by Jarrett looked good, and then you get the finish. So yeah, I think it has been a good little match. I think he gets hampered by the rush setting. I'd like these guys to get time on pay per view. I think they could. Like these two at SuperBrawl would be something I'd like to see if they gave him 15 minutes or something. But they're both entertaining. It was a good showcase of both. The U.S. title division's kind of low-key loaded up, too, when you look at some of the guys that are in the mix as well. And a good finish because you get the Mongo Jarrett stuff. That's been one of our big angles. So I went 2 3/4 in the match. Again, one I'd like to see more of, but was still very, very solid.
All right. So we'll stick with Nitro because they kind of flow right in. So Tony they let us know in the announce booth. Tony says now they can show the footage of how Hulk Hogan was beaten by Piper with the sleeper at Starrcade. They're going to show that for the first time ever on broadcast TV. So they show the clip. He makes an appearance. He has a new line tonight. So it gets right to the part where Randy Anderson is checking on Hogan, which again, like, this is Randy Anderson. Keep that in mind. Like, he's the official of this match. So that kind of plays in as well. So it gets to the part where Anderson's raising Hogan's arms twice. He's going to raise it for the third time, and we get technical difficulties where the screen just goes, staticky, whatever. Yep. That's all. Tony says, can somebody tell me what happened? He gets word in his ear that someone's in the truck. It doesn't take very long to where we learn that it was Eric Bischoff that's in the truck. Eric actually comes running out onto the announce booth with the tape. Says, don't you ever pull a stunt like that again, you or anyone else in this organization. He demolishes the tape and stomps off. Larry has a funny line, gee, he can beat up a tape. We go to break. So I again thought this was good. I thought this is good in showing, like, Eric has a lot of power. And he's kind of like a little Napoleonic with his abuse of power, kind of running around as a tyrant. But this was good Eric to me, like good Eric on as far as him being an NWO and a foil for everybody else.
I mean, they're doing a great job of building him up as having unchecked, unabashed power within this construct. And if you know what's coming, as what they're going to do to combat that, it's really well built. Like, you can see it kind of coming, I guess, now in retrospect. Like, okay, they're building him up to have all this crazy power.
Right.
I'm the highest ranking official, this and that they're going to bring someone in, right, to check him, right? So that's going to come. And it's been, when that happens, I think it's going to show well, because it's like, oh, wow, okay, they've really slow built to now he's becoming just out of control, stripping titles and doing whatever he wants at all times. So, all right, back to Raw we go. We get our Western Union rewind as Crush beating Ahmed earlier in the night. Brings us to our match. Our next match, which is Doug Furnas taking on the British Bulldog. So continuing this little tag team feud. Bulldog is out with Owen Hart and Clarence Mason. He's peacocking around. Vince says Ahmed is back stalking the nation with a 2x4. Furnas is stoic. We get going. Owen's bragging on his belt. It's a slammy. We start with a back and forth, which is won by Furnas. He has a drop kick to clear out Bulldog. Bulldog comes back. Furnas keeps pouring it on. Some heavy strikes, a big vertical suplex. LaFon is at ringside. He keeps Bulldog in the ring as Furnas chops away. Bulldog dodges a charge. Furnas crashes to the corner and falls to the floor. Vince tells us that Furnas and LaFon will challenge Bulldog and Owen for the tag team titles at In Your House, Final Four. Bulldog slams the steps on Furnas outside. He goes into a handspring, which always pops me to celebrate. Vince tells us Ahmed is caught up with the nation. And after a break, we see where Ahmed kicked the locker room door down, but the room was empty. This part was funny to me because it's like he finds this room with the giant Nation of Domination sign on it. Why was he searching for like 20 minutes? And there's a room that, like, he should have went right to the room first, right? And then be searching for him. But,
and Lawler immediately says, "This is a big trap, you idiots."
Yeah, all right. He's setting him up. Bulldog works the back. He cranks a chin lock, cuts off a comeback with a clothesline. Furnas blocks a pile driver. Bulldog gets a suplex for two, back to a chin lock. Furnas breaks free, battles into a belly to belly. Bulldog counters a Rana with a nasty powerbomb for two. Owen gets on the apron with a slammy. LaFon ties up the ref, but Furnas shoots Bulldog. He hits it, bangs off the slammy, but Furnas only gets two. But a moment later, Furnas gets a sunset flip, and then Bulldog falls forward and cradles for the win. Which surprised me. We'll talk about it in a second. But Bulldog and Owen argue. Mason tries to cool them down. Vince wonders if there's an issue because Clarence Mason is so involved with the nation. He's kind of slacking with these guys. And then in a nice bit, I don't know if this is planned or not, we get a slow-mo of the slammy falling over. Yeah. And Vince says it's a bad omen for Bulldog and Owen. Yeah. The slammy toppling over, which I don't think it was planned. I think it just happened, but it's a nice pickup. So this is fine. The problem is the Raw format is so stale. We got this taped crowd. There's a low humming. We have sluggish spots. Like, there's no energy to any of this. And this is a match that should be good. Like, British Bulldog, Doug Furnas, like, this should be 3+ without them even, batting an eye. I like the story, but the finish is wonky. Like, Furnas and LaFon are set up for a title shot. They keep losing singles matches. Like, why are they, why should we believe in any way they're going to win the belts? But you have to protect Bulldog, and he's super protected because they're setting him up for Austin and Mania, ostensibly, right, is where we're headed. So I almost think they should have saved Furnace and LaFon and just fed some other team to Bulldog and Owen in the interim if you had to. Made us run the Godwins one last time or something. But it's like you're kind of making Furnace and LaFon look like doofuses, and they can't even win a singles match. Now they're supposed to, I guess they pinned him in Survivor Series, but beyond that, Bulldog and Owen have dominated like anytime they've really touched. So I ended up going 2.5. Like it was, to me, it was very disappointing. Outside of the power bomb and Owen shtick, like there wasn't much here.
This is about what I expected. I went 2.5 too. I mean, it was fine. But yeah, the same comment. I said, decent match, but I mean, they're making Furnace and LaFon look awful. I mean, this is the. I don't know. You could have put Owen in there. I think that'd have been better.
Well, didn't we have Owen and LaFon, or maybe we're gonna get it? I don't know. But
I mean, there was some cool stuff here. I like Bulldog with the steps. The power bomb you mentioned looked really good, and then he essentially pins him with the same move he does for SummerSlam '92.
Yeah,
it's the same cradle, which is cool. I don't know how much he busted that out. It was kind of like a callback.
In a vacuum, it's a good finish. Like if this is a regular random match, it's a really good finish. But like you try to set these guys up as your top contenders. I thought for sure we got for, and they did it with the slammy. They had a ready-made
miscommunication. That's what made it the worst. Like even if it was just that pin itself, it's like okay, but like the fact that they run into each other and then Furnace rolls them up and only gets a 2, and then you go to that finish. That looked awful. Meanwhile, LaFon's at ringside, just kind of staring, watching all this happen too. Like when Owen gets on the apron, where was he at? What was he? It was all a mess. This had kind of like bits and pieces you could sprinkle. Like Owen had some funny lines. He says he points at LaFon one time and says he gives Canada a bad name like his lousy brother Brett. And then I actually kind of like the Clarence Mason stuff a little bit because I was thinking the same thing. Like he's also like he is a weird fit. Like I know with Cornette gone, they were kind of stuck, but
well, I think they wanted to put him in with Bulldog and Owen, and I don't think they realized that he was a really good fit for the Nation because I don't think the Nation was probably a concept quite yet to them when they joined Mason with Bulldog and Owen.
Yeah.
I think if they knew that they were going to put him with the Nation, they would have never done that. They would have just kept Cornette or just made Bulldog and Owen on their own. That's what I think. I think he was like too good to pass up to have him with the Nation, but they should have severed him with Bulldog and Owen.
Yeah, they got. I think the biggest issue with Bulldog, like right now in this moment, it's mostly a Bulldog thing where he's almost involved in these 3 separate things. Like he has his comedy stuff internally with Owen, like some of that stuff's kind of played comedically where they're running into each other, the slammies, that stuff. Then he has this like serious scientific tag team wrestling feud with Furnace and LaFon over the tag titles. And he's also still got this kind of like more heated personal brawl type issue with Austin. So
he keeps coming in and screwing him.
Yeah, it doesn't feel diversified. It feels like from one second to the next, he's playing these drastically different characters. And you're like, what's,
something tells me this is the final week. Maybe we'll be able to put it as a drop dangle soon. This is going to be the final week of Bulldog in Austin, I would think. Because Thursday was where everything changes, right? I got to think they were adjusting to Bret Austin by then. So this probably is it. And they don't even interact here. So maybe it was already done. I don't know, but it was likely on its way out by this point. So that might be it anyway.
All right. Nitro, we get an ad for the sold out shirt. I was like, who's buying that now? But
20 plus $5.95 still in Warwick, Rhode Island. So there you go.
Yeah. Then we get our Saturday Night Shield. It's Harlem Heat versus Public Enemy, Lex Luger versus La Parka, which I can't wait to watch that match. And Glacier's in action as well. Go to the ring. We get a debut on Nitro. It's Ultimo Dragon versus, I thought it was Bob Backlund running out there.
I know, right?
Billy Pearl.
Billy Pearl.
straight up circa 1980 Bob Backlund with the way he's dressed, his tights, his
does not look intimidating in any
no.
way.
Now, fun fact, we have seen Billy Pearl on Wrestling Warzone. Did you
Was
know
he
that?
in World War III?
No, he was in is like Brian Myers or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, on a Raw in October of '95.
oh,
So
geez.
yeah,
Okay,
I mean, yeah, 5 years
there you
ago,
go.
real time. But yeah, so we'd seen Billy Pearl before. But there you go. They're talking about Eric Bischoff on commentary. Tony says Eric could fire him, which kind of makes him nervous. So again, talk about he has a real job, his real stakes and stuff
Right.
like that. Um, and some chain wrestling here. Pearl actually gets a drop kick on the first exchange. Demoy busts out a USA chant. Ultimo fires back with some kicks, but he misses his head spring elbow. Pearl gets a slam in. He goes up top, but Dragon catches him with a drop kick on the way down. And then very quickly hits a moonsault and a tiger suplex. So another very kind of like 2.5 minute, mostly squashy type match. Kind of a weird spot, I thought, for Pearl to be in this. I mean, I didn't get much of a read on him, except he was kind of like your, 1985 Tim Horner going out there at Techwood to do the job. So I'm going to 1.5. It wasn't what it was.
A pure jobber. I think they're probably going to use him as like kind of using Billy Kidman, the Billies right now is like on Saturday night he'll probably pick up a couple wins maybe or be competitive, and then they roll him out on Nitro as like a name that'll get worked over.
Yeah, I think we only see him one more time. But
yeah, so a lot of teasing to the Giant Hogan could happen. So again, they're trying to use this hook to keep people tuning in throughout the night that we may get Hogan Giant again.
yes.
So 1.5 for me. Again, just a squash. I mean, really, whatever. Pearl's fine as a live body to beat around, I guess, but that's about it. All right. Back on Raw, Vince is walking us through highlights from Madison Square Garden on Saturday. Savio turned on Ahmed, joined the Nation. We then go to Shotgun from Webster Hall, where Savio kind of explains that he didn't join the Nation. He just says he just had a bit of a temper. He attacked Ahmed out of frustration, and tonight he's going to wrestle Rocky Maivia and show who he really is. And of course, during the match, the Nation comes out. They sucker punch Rocky. And then he stands tall. So it's a quick fake out. I'm glad they didn't drag that out. Whatever, just put him in. They beat the shit out of Rocky and leave him laying. And Vince had hyped Shotgun's big return to the Mirage this coming weekend. So that'll be coming up. I thought this was fine. It was, again, like solidify Savio's heel turn. I think beating up Rocky is a good way to go about it. He's kind of a good, pure little face to take the beating. See if they got what they do with it out of this. Maybe he becomes an ally for Ahmed. We'll see. But for now, not too much cooking.
Yep, not bad. So we head back to Nitro. It's time for our big Horseman interview. All four are there tonight. We talked about how Flair wasn't on Sold Out. So he's here tonight. Deborah and Woman also there. Gene says he thought the Horsemen were going to crumble, but things have turned around. We get a big mean woo Gene tonight. It's one of the first big ones I can think of. Flair says they're in Des Moines, Iowa. He asks where Dan Gable is. So the blast for the past. Last week they walked down without him. He can blame Benoit for his decision of love. Woman, you finally made the right choice in manhood, Flair says. So, obviously always somebody that is has his eye on the prize and always makes a good decision when it comes to love.
Oh yeah, he's known for his choices in females and relationships.
The standard bearer when it comes to making marriage choices. Deborah Gale, you will have to do as Mongo says because we have to coexist. So another know your place, woman. He did. So he'd kind of been pretty face-ish, whatever. Then all of a sudden he turns that quickly and says, "Keep your mouth shut, fat boy," to somebody in the crowd. As he hands over to Arn. Arn takes his turn on the microphone. He says to Jeff Jarrett, they don't speak English well in Tennessee, but Mongo sent a universal message tonight, and you know where you stand, and it isn't as a horseman. He says Benoit versus Sullivan was a page from the Horseman 1980s playbook. Mongo says, "Did you see the nail I drove into Jarrett's coffin?" He tells the crowd to shut up too. Deborah then gets on the mic, says that's just the way it's got to be. Deborah says she's always pulled for Chris to be a horseman 100%. Benoit wraps us up here. He says, Sullivan, it's his way or the highway. He's beating him at his game. It's time to let go. He's beating him mentally, physically, spiritually, the spiritual battle that Dusty was all excited about. You aren't going to win and taking everything he wanted to take. He's wanted to take it when he's wanted to take it. A point had to be proven, and tonight he doesn't need anyone backing him up for his matchup. He's going to the ring alone. Woman says she's a very happy woman. Deborah says, we're ready to leave now, and off they go. So this was another United Horseman interview. As of now, it seems like everybody's getting along. The band's back together, etc. I thought it was good. It was fine.
Yeah, right in line with it. We should go back and count how many of these there were.
There's been a lot. Really,
a lot.
The Jarrett. I mean, since Flair got injured, they wanted to keep him at most of the shows.
Right. So.
But you had the whole thing with the Jarrett recruitment, and now it's segued into this, like, basically.
Really since September, they pretty much every week on Nitro doing one of these.
Yeah.
Man at the Clash. Yeah, I mean, the standard. Mongo saying he drove the nail into Jarrett's coffin, which, I mean, he didn't really do much, but okay. Again, yeah, whatever. Flair's Flair. Arn making fun of people in Tennessee, etc. Whatever.
So then we get a very quick squash. It's Ron Powers, who's also a day review. Yep. Kenny Powers.
Powers' brother.
Yeah, versus Lex Luger. Luger gets a quick shoulder block, forearm shot, and the rack. I mean, he wins this in like a minute. I went a half star.
Yeah, I mean, it's the standard, just whatever. Like Luger beating a big guy to show that he can beat big guys, right. Which we can, even though he's not feuding with the Giant anymore, he's still beating big guys. Half a star for me. Yeah, just a squash. Gene gets in the ring with him. Luger puts the support behind the Giant. He says NWO is a big problem. Him and Giant have mutual respect. Luger made his own mistakes, but we got to start trusting people if we're going to beat the NWO. And he's going to open the door. He's willing to be a friend to an old foe. So this is a really big moment. It establishes Luger as a leader. Establishes Luger as being the guy to bring Giant back in the fold, put their past issues, and he's a guy that speaks from experience, right? Like he was someone that was frozen out, but Sting brought him in, and now he's going to do the same to Giant and show that he can let bygones be bygones to the better of the company. So that's a really good Luger moment.
Yeah, a pretty quick promo and some kind of funny Luger stuff where he's like, stick that big 21 through the door because I'm all ears. But yeah, good moment for him. I enjoyed this. This was something I didn't remember, but I liked it for character advancement on Luger's end.
I'm looking forward to, like, if Luger starts doing something. like he's really just been squashing big, other than Giant at Starrcade, he's just been beating big guys. For like
I mean, he had his Giant feud, but since then he's been kind of in the wilderness.
Even before that, like he beat big guys to set up World War III. Since Sting went in the darkness, he really hasn't done much, honestly.
Well, I thought that was good direction, at least because he was centered around his feud with the Giant. But yeah, I got some fantasy booking where, with what happens at the end, I almost think you could have done like a pretty big Luger Giant versus Outsiders tag team feud.
Right.
I don't kind of know why they didn't go that direction.
Oh, we may. All right, let's get to our main event on Raw, and that's Vader and Mankind taking on the Godwins. Paul Bearer's new creepy crew come out. We get clips from a Toronto press conference where Tiger Ali Singh was revealed to be joining the WWF. He's the son of Tiger Jeet Singh. Any thoughts on the big signing? They made a big deal out of this.
Yeah, well, we talked about it. I mean, this was a big Observer story about a month ago. I mean, it was for international purposes.
Yeah.
Tiger Jeet Singh, I've been watching a lot of him in New Japan in the early 1980s, and he's not good, and neither was his son. So
no, not good at all. They try, but I mean, they're really like they try to the international piece, try to like go in on the Rocky stuff too. You know what I mean? Where he's like, that whatever they had the one third generation guy, now they're trying with this guy. Like they're really trying to cash in their chips on these sons of great wrestlers. So And
Right.
whatever, great. Vince also hypes the Femme Nikita coming up next. And again, his favorite pastime of Raw these days, shits on Robin Hood while doing it. They take so many shots at Robin Hood.
He really hated Robin Hood.
Big Phineas and Mankind start off with a tepid slugfest. Vince says next week is Royal Rumble Raw. For the first time since 1989, the Royal Rumble match will be on network TV, thanks to USA. We will see matches from the Sky Dome, plus the Royal Rumble match in full. We get Henry, Hank tags in, him and Mankind. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question on that. Where did it air in 1989?
I think he meant 88.
Okay.
I think he meant the 88
wondering.
Rumble on USA. Yeah,
I was like, did it air on prime time?
No,
I
I don't think so, but I think he screwed up the year.
Okay.
I also don't know if they deliver on this, because I don't think we get the whole Rumble on that Raw. So I don't know if they were planning to do it and then decided not to. I'm not sure what went awry there, unless they show it after or something. But
I'll have to track and see.
All right, him and Hank and Mankind trade punches. Vader wants to tag in, but Mankind keeps rocking and resetting, stays in the ring. Mankind dumps Phineas outside, shoots him back in before Vader can pounce. They stare at each other. Paul tries to rationalize with them. Vader tags himself in. He mauls Phineas with some hard strikes and a stiff clothesline. King is not shut up about the fucking Patriots the whole night. Like, he talks about them constantly. Mm-hmm. Mankind tags himself in now, hammers away at Phineas. Phineas roars back. Mankind goes to the mandible claw. Hank comes in and breaks it up with a clothesline. And him and Foley both tumble to the floor in a good spot. King mocks Arkansas as Vader holds Mankind. Phineas can't suplex him back in. Mankind and Vader work together. They throw Phineas outside. Hank makes a save. All four guys are throwing down. Some really good offense in there. They're hitting each other pretty hard. We get a George Mirasan Snickers Slam of the Week during the break. It's Ahmed splattering Hunter S. Helmsley with a spine buster on Superstars. We find out Ahmed will challenge Hunter in your house for the IC title. After the break, Mankind's clawing away on Phineas, misses a charge. Hank is in, wrecks both guys with clotheslines, gets a back suplex on Vader. Vader dodges an elbow, drops his own elbow to the ribs and groin, knocks Hank to the floor. Phineas ties up the ref as Mankind grabs a chair. Hank ducks, and Mankind smashes Vader by accident, and Vader is counted out. Paul Bearer barks at Mankind as Mankind smiles and walks away. King thinks Mankind had time to stop, but he did not. This is a pretty good little Haas battle. I actually didn't mind it. This is when the Godwins are kind of at their best, actually. Like, I feel like Henry's had a couple of decent matches with Vader, with Mankind, like where he just throws down, makes it a slugfest. I do think Vader looks woken up and fresh in this new push, but we'll talk about the finish in a sec. Henry seems motivated too. I thought it was a decent closer. I think Vader and Mankind could cause some waves if they could figure it out. I like the story. Like, Paul's doing anything he can to get these guys on the same page, but they're both maniacs. So I went 2 3/4. But again, similar to Bulldog, like, Vader's a week and a half out from Final Four.
Yeah.
And it feels like Bulldog, where we went for very one-dimensional stories in 96, where a guy had one thing going on and that was it. And we've kind of been excited where we have multiple things happening. But what it's leading to is they have different guys in different positions, like different guys doing two different things that are dichotomies from each other. So Vader is trying to do this friendship with Mankind, become a dominant monster team, losing to the Godwins, but he's also in this Final Four match where he's supposed to be a top title contender. So very similar to what they got going on Bulldog.
Yeah, that was my main problem with this. I went 2 1/4. I thought there was a few moments of fun where, especially Hank and Vader on the outside, they have a pretty wild brawl right before they go to the final break. The finish itself worked out pretty good, where live it's like, man, that kind of looked bad. Like, he definitely moved out of the way. But then when they show the replay and they talk about it on commentary, it makes sense. Like, well, did Mankind have time to stop and he just didn't? Or, what's going on, this kind of unholy alliance that they have going on. But yeah, I mean, there's not much there's just not been much description on what brought these two together besides Bear, and why, and what the goal is. Like, what's the objective? Why are they together? Vader has this world title match coming up, so why,
it feels like another thing they should have just started 2 weeks later. Like, let him get through Final Four, and then Paul says, hey, like, I have an idea now that you've, not won that match or whatever, why don't we try and go for the tag titles and you and Mankind team up or whatever.
Yeah. Phineas spitting up in the air and then slicking back his hair is
classic hillbilly.
Awful.
Always awful. So we wrap with Vince hyping in your house, but it gets cut off because Ahmed finally catches the nation. They're loading up their car. He comes swinging. He puts one of PG-13 in the trunk, and the car takes off. And Vince hypes up the big Royal Rumble Raw from the Sky Dome next week. So I didn't mind the finish. Like the way he actually chucks him pretty good. Like he picks him up and flips him in the trunk. Yeah. So that wasn't a bad finish, I guess.
It was all right. We never saw Farouk besides after the
right showed up in the aisle. Yeah. So, do we do the Raw Awards, or are we gonna wait? I forget. You want to do them now?
We'll wait. We can wait.
Okay. A little requiem, I guess, for the 1 hour Raws. I mean, they've been with us for a year and a half. Like stale taping, a lot of rough episodes, real doldrum episodes. You know, so we'll see. I wasn't too sad to see it come to an end.
No.
I like that they're doing concepts already. Like next week, Royal Rumble Raw, we're going to be at Sky Dome. That's already a huge building. Like we're going to run, that's WrestleMania 6 that they're running, you know, like the Sky Dome for a Raw. Or whether it's a Raw or a house show, whatever it's going to be, they're going to show clips from it. And they're going to show Rumble stuff. So they're trying different stuff. We know the week after that's Thursday, Raw Thursday. They have a world title match planned. So we already got kind of big stuff pegged for our first. And we also know the week after that is a 2-hour episode where Sid is going to, or whoever the champion is, I should say, is going to defend or something. Right? I think they have something planned for that week. So they, they already got some big stuff planned to have different concepts for these new Raws.
Right. All right, hour number 2 of Nitro sounds off. It's Tony, Tenay, Bobby. They lead us in. Tony lets us know we may see Hogan versus Giant in this hour. They recap hour 1 with what was going on with the Steiners and Bischoff. Did you have any notes on that?
No, nothing.
And then we go to our first match of hour number 2, which is the Amazing French Canadians versus Arn Anderson and Mongo, baby. So singing of the Canadian national anthem, of course, Tony says, Jock's like, I'd appreciate if y'all all, be respectful. Tony says, I'd appreciate if they could sing the anthem for the change, the actual anthem. Right. They get through their song. Bobby says they aren't the Isley brothers, but they have a distinctive style. So we're here. This is the end of the road. This is the last Arn Anderson match.
That's crazy.
Which is sad. I'd be interested to read in the Torch or Observer whether they knew or what was going on, because I was looking to see if there was something obvious here, but didn't really see anything.
Is he on TV? He stays around.
That's something I wonder too. Yeah, I mean, I think he stays around a little bit, but yeah,
right. He just kind of on the outside, because I mean, we don't do the retirement. That's not until what, August? So August, September, right?
His spot is August. So Jock suckers Mongo on the apron. The Amazing French Canadians do an immediate 2-on-1 attack on Arn. Ouellette throws him over the top rope, which would have been a DQ, but the referee was distracted. Colonel Robert Parker gives him boots on the outside. I thought a very interesting start. It was like the Amazing French Canadians were more aggressive than we've seen from them, which I appreciated. Arn tries to fight out of the corner, but he gets double teamed. Heart attack clothesline from the Amazing French Canadians with Ouellette hitting that in the anvil roll. Tony says he's never seen Arn beaten around like this. Double stun gun. Jock's taunting Mongo on the apron. Arn and Ouellette hit head to head. That gives Arn a chance to tag in Mongo. He does make the tag. Mongo shockingly has a really good hot tag here. He lariats
like a wrecking ball.
He lariats both of them, hits the football stance clip, back body drop. He does a power slam to Jock, which looks impressive, but Ouellette catches him. Double clothesline sends both of the Amazing French Canadians down. Robert Parker throws the flag in the ring, but when Curtis gets that and sends it out of the ring, Mongo is able to use the Halliburton to pick up the win. Shockingly fun match to me. I didn't expect anything out of this. And I'm not like the Amazing French Canadians. I thought this was the best they looked, and I thought it carried a different structure from what I was expecting, where like the Horsemen were really beaten up a lot. Now I do see there's some issues where, and I mean, we talked about it on the interview. It's like, are they face or are they heel? There's still some definite murkiness there where they're telling the crowd to shut up, fat boy. As the horse, Mongo's yelling at the crowd, and then he gets the face, face and
right, the hot tag,
So a little weird there. But as a match, I thought it was a lot of fun. 2 3/4 for me.
Bobby, I think Mongo's getting good after he wins, which he is. I mean, he's come
This
making
definitely
progress.
looked good. Yeah.
They did the right approach with them. They've stuck him in tag teams with like two of the greatest workers in the company, and just exclusively been doing that. So of course he's going to learn by osmosis, you know. And he's a good enough athlete. So this is fine. It had a good start, the quick pace, the crowd was into it. Mongo was good, clean in house at the end. I thought it looked strong. The Canadians, like you said, for once didn't slog things down. A lot of talk still about Hogan Giant throughout the match too. 2 1/4 for me.
All right, come back from break. We get our road report.
Stagger Lee Marshall's in Memphis. He hypes up a big Nitro party at BB King's. Next week's show is at the Mid-South Coliseum. He talks about the local flavor and says there's a hunka burning weasel going on at Graceland. So there you go.
The NWO music starts up. Out comes the Outsiders in 6. I made a note here just when I saw them come down because we haven't seen just them 3 come down that much. And we'll have to track when they actually first start saying Wolfpack.
Right.
Hasn't happened yet. Someone in the crowd has cut in NWO in their haircut, which Bobby has a line like, "Oh, that'll catch on, I'm sure," which was kind of funny.
Have they even started doing the click symbol yet? Really?
No, not much.
That must come with the Wolfpack thing, really.
Like they do sometimes, like when they're really like hot dogging, but it's not like.
But it's not like a thing where it's like an obvious thing that they do. I think they're doing the Wolfpack stuff around that time because I think they kind of make it like it's a wolf.
I mean, DiBiase still was almost doing like the hook 'em horns. He was still like very like not as prominent. So they're ready for their tag team match. Up starts Stunning Steve Austin's music from 1994.
We're gonna track this. So we're gonna track this because this song gets so much play over the next few years in WCW. It is every jobber's song. We're gonna track how many people use this song.
Yeah. And out comes The Extreme, who is Ace Darling and Devin Storm. First look at these guys. So Tenay kind of rattles off some of their indie credentials real quickly. This is just a dismantling by the Outsiders, of course. I mean, this, we talked about in Sold Out, like the bits with the Miss NWO and how that was like them doing uncool stuff, that and the entrance of the whole pay-per-view. They've done good tonight, and like anything being lame has been Bischoff's overuse of power, and it's been like the good portion of that. And like this, like being kind of a bait and switch, but not really. Hey, we're defending the tag team belts, but it's against these jabrones that were beaten up. Like, I like that. I think that's like the good kind of bait and switch that they could do.
Right.
They dominate. Hall hits the fallaway slam. Nash absolutely kills. I think it was it Darling with a clothesline, sidewalk slam, the outsider edge from Hall. Hall pins them with 1 foot. So a straight squash. I went a star. I mean, it was what it was. It was a straight squash, but it was an entertaining segment for what they were trying to accomplish.
It felt like a little bit of a reset for a lot of guys. We talked about earlier Giant, I think with Luger, with these guys. It feels like we're kind of resetting after Sold Out to start the next real long stretch. Sold Out felt like a bridge because like Starrcade kind of like the end of the journey for a bit, and then Sold Out almost, I guess, felt a little bit like the start, but almost just like an interlude. It feels like now we're really going to kick off like the big spring stories here. So we're kind of resetting everyone. It's a showcase for the Outsiders. Again, we're using Bischoff's power. They get a scrub match. The swagger of the Outsiders, this is completely unmatched right now wrestling. Like they're next level. We found out Nitro's in Jacksonville in 2 weeks. Tony tells us that. Tenay talks about the Extreme's big success of the Northeast Circuit. Like I guess they were getting it done. Devin Storm and Darling, but Storm obviously stays around, right? I think he's there from here to the end. I don't know if he goes right into jobber mode for a bit before they give him his gimmick, but I don't know about Darling. Does Darling hang around too?
I don't know. I mean, they were certainly like in PWI around this time. I remember because started getting magazines in like 97, 98, and you would see like them, Reckless Youth, Cheetah Master, like
Mm-hmm.
they were part of that kind of crew. So was what it was. Yeah, it looks like Storm kind of is in and out. He actually has a cup of coffee. He's on a shotgun Saturday night
Oh,
in
okay.
August. So he pretty much remains in the Indies till he becomes, Crowbar in
Right. Okay.
WCW later on. All right, what is next? Oh, I mean, just Joe Gomez versus Kevin Sullivan. It's a 45-second match. Tony lets us know tickets are still on sale for SuperBrawl. Oh, that was a little surprising. San Francisco is always a weird market. It feels like. I don't know. It's tough to get a gauge on, but yeah, this is a 45-second match. Sullivan beats him up. He throws him on the outside. He actually throws a chair at his head, and then he puts him back in and wins with a double stomp. I want a quarter star. Muted.
Sat on it. It's quite the parade of talent here tonight. Gomez coming out on top of those other guys. Nitro the next night after Super Bowl is gonna be in Sacramento, so they plug both of those tickets. It's just it's a parade squash tonight. Like I said, it feels like a hard reset. We have angles burning, but we're almost like resetting all these guys, just showcasing them, letting them get big strong wins, and it's funny because on the heels of that article from Keller about the like setup of these shows changing, we get a Nitro that's almost predominantly squash matches up and down for the most part. So it was interesting setup that, he talked about how that was like kind of the older ways, but it's a Nitro that's kind of low key filled with them here tonight. So a quarter star for me is the Sullivan getting ready for Benoit.
No, yeah, not much luchador talent.
No.
This was the one that I thought though, like, I mean, this was like a 2-minute segment, so it was what it was. But
Do you think there was like
definite filler.
they said it was like snowy out? I wonder if they couldn't get guys in from Mexico, like because they probably didn't have them as sold out, so they were maybe gonna fly in for the Nitro and couldn't because he said it was
I mean, that happened last
cold
week
and
too in
snowy.
the United Center. Well,
Yeah.
Parka had his issues.
Yeah. So maybe it was a travel thing. So they, bring in these other guys or whatever, Extreme, and we'll even see another one in a minute. Like, or maybe they're just trying to establish you. Maybe it's like that fall of '96 WF thing, right? They're trying to set up these new guys, like the one we'll see in a minute, Billy Pearl, the Extreme. Like maybe they're just trying to set up dudes that'll win some stuff on the weekends and put over guys on Nitro. Or they panicked and they couldn't get guys from Mexico and had to just bring in dudes to the Northeast.
Yeah, maybe. NWO music. It's Hogan, Miss Elizabeth, and Bischoff. Liz retreats as they get into the ring. Tony lets us know that she's in distress. We do get a little caveat on Hogan's music here. He's still using the NWO theme, but we have the disembodied voice now shouting out he's the biggest icon in all of wrestling. So that's a nice touch there.
The biggest new world order.
Yeah, biggest icon in all of wrestling. I always like that. So Bischoff recaps the sold out match. It's a completely warped view of it. At one point, too, Hogan wants to change sides. He starts out to Bischoff's right hand side and he changes. I don't know. I guess he thinks he has a better looking side. So Bischoff says, Savage, Piper, now Giant all couldn't get it done. Hogan gets over the mic. He lets us know what we have here is a failure to communicate. No one's in the same league as Hollywood. He studies his opponent. He drugged the stupid, dumb Giant through technical moves and reverse fireman carries. All he could do.
Olympic wrestling.
Yeah. All he could do was say, Hollywood, you are the greatest. He goes down a long list of has-beens with Piper and Savage and anyone else that gets in the ring with Hollywood. Bischoff says he knows Hogan wants vacation and, has stuff lined up, but, will he answer the Giants challenge? Hogan talks about his new Warner Brothers commitments, shouts out his next movie.
Shadow Soldiers.
Yes, but he will accept the challenge tonight. At that point, we see Savage and Sting in the crowd together. Macho's wearing black and red. Sting kind of points his bat at Hogan. Hogan says, our Stinger has laid it all out. Macho Man might have seen the light and the missing link we've been looking for. Bischoff then says, hey, Macho Man, there's not a place for you in WCW, but, if you want to talk NWO business, we can talk. Have you guys contact my guys. So they kind of go away. And Hogan's doing his posing routine. He says his posing routine will make everyone see how beautiful Hollywood is. And he will beat up the Giant 9 days a week for free because it's easy pickings. I love this, actually. I thought this was like Hogan's inflated ego, like pompous, in his own universe. He stuck up his own ass. Like this was great to me. Like he was totally like in love with himself and like completely narcissistic, and it didn't overstay its welcome. He had some funny lines, so I really enjoyed this segment.
It was good, yeah, and I like that he keeps accepting these challenges. Like they make it like, oh, no way Hogan will accept it. He's a pussy, and he keeps saying yes. But it's because they always have tricks up their sleeves, right? Oh yeah, we'll accept the match tonight on free TV. Blah blah blah. But they're gonna have the troops immediately show up and beat the shit out of them probably. But it's we'll see. I think this needs to be the last one though. I think they've gone to the well now a few times with this. Like, stay with us. We're gonna get Hogan Giant. Like, you only get so many shots at this one. So this should be the last one where they do this, where they make a Hogan Giant match during the show, and then tease you to the end. So hopefully this is it.
Right. Go back to the announce booth. Bobby knows that Savage. He says he's the most driven and determined athlete you'll find in any sport. Bischoff doesn't want him going after the NWO. He knows Savage has Hogan's number, so that's why he's now saying, okay, you can join our team.
Right.
That leads us to our next match: Dean Malenko versus Jerry Flynn. Dean has the beard going tonight. They talk about how Dean's been on a roll on commentary. Flynn gets a quick kick, sending Dean down, but he kind of whiffs on a kick in the corner. But I liked when he goes back inside, Malenko kind of no-sells it, and he's on the attack immediately with a belly-to-belly. I thought that was a good kind of point in Dean's favor. As we said, we wanted to track this as his number one in PWI 500 year. That was good. Like him, recognizing that the kick didn't hit good and he's immediately on offense. Flynn does get some more offense in, some punches to the body of Dean. He misses a charge, but kicks Dean coming off the top rope, hits a power slam for a near fall, but then goes for another kick, and Dean worked a little bit on the leg. And when he ducks the kick, he locks on the cloverleaf, picks up the win. So this was, again, another 3-minute match. It was a little more competitive than what we'd seen with the other kind of squash matches. I thought it was fine for what it was. I went 2 stars.
Yeah, this was fine. I mean, Flynn was the other guy I was talking about, like these random dudes suddenly showing up that they're giving matches to. So again, is it an anomaly, or are they trying to just build up a little army of guys that they can roll out on Nitro with names to put dudes over? A lot of Hogan Giant talk, of course. Malenko is red hot. Today talks about the history of Hogan and Giant matches. Says Giant always dominates, but they can't win yet. Dean finishes the cloverleaf. I thought Flynn had some decent offense. He's perfect for these kind of matches. Another showcase and a night of them for Dean. So 2 stars for me.
Back to the announce booth. Tony says they're tired of hearing about the Pythons. This will be the 4th time. Mike Tenay says it's the 4th time Giant has gotten in the ring with Hogan.
Yep.
Bobby is talking. He basically spits out a sentence, and we see a cop just come up to the announce booth, hands Tony a letter, and says it must be opened immediately. Bobby lets him know he's canned. And in a great touch, Tony is like, well, it might be. And Bobby's like, yeah, I'm serious. And Tony says, I need to look at this before I, read it out for the audience, because he doesn't know what it'll say. He gets excited as he starts to read it. He stands up and he's like, give me the house mic. He announces to the house mic and says, we're announcing this to you and to Nitro. We just received a telegram from the executive committee that because of the recent conduct of Hulk Hogan and a review of the rights of his contract, based upon unanimous approval of the championship committee, he must defend his heavyweight title at SuperBrawl, and it will be against Rowdy Roddy Piper. So that gets a big cheer from the crowd. Tony lets us know a copy of this telegraph will be sent to each member of the committee as well as Ted Turner. I thought that was a decent. I like that touch of the Ted Turner, just because it's like
Right.
Bischoff has been so like power stricken throughout this whole show, talking about like I'm the highest ranking officer of WCW's committee and whatnot, but you know he doesn't outrank Ted Turner, so like he really can't back out of this one. Based on what's happened, I thought that was a cool little touch. The crowd starts chanting rowdy. This was a cool announcement. I like the way this was done. It felt different. Everything about this I thought was well done.
Yeah, me too. Do you think it kind of came out of nowhere though, or do you think it's been established enough that Piper? Because I feel like they haven't really talked about Piper like they do with the Gaelic stuff, but they haven't really teased that he's like in the mix potentially. It kind of comes out of nowhere.
They've been good to mention him. I think it had to be him. Because like we talked about with the Giant, like they went to that well too much.
Yeah, you can't do Giant again.
And they're not ready for whatever's going on with Sting and Savage. You could have done Luger. You could have maybe done Luger, but I didn't.
Well, I like them doing Piper again because he won, so he should get a title match.
He has the win over him, right?
I just feel like they haven't established that Piper wants it. Like, so the way they announce it, like, implies that Piper's on board. But last we saw Piper, he was like, "I'm done," So
well, I think they should have about that. Yeah. I mean, I thought they did good at least saying like it's not Piper necessarily challenging. Like they mentioned on commentary, they're like Tony at one point's like, "Can we get in contact with him?" And Bobby's like, "He may not be in the country.
Well,
he could be."
That's what they should have said. Instead of saying Piper will challenge Hogan, they should have said the executive committee wants Piper to challenge Hogan, but we need Piper to approve or accept, so we got to see what he's going to do. That would have been a minor tweak. It's nitpicking, but it's just like the whole story's been that Piper doesn't want to wrestle, and now suddenly they're just blindly announcing that Piper's getting a title match.
Yeah, Tenay even mentions he was like after Starrcade, Piper said he was retired. So
right, the risk was too high.
They could have done that. They could have said like pending Piper's approval.
That's it. Yeah, just something minor like that, where you just kind of hint that it's not a lock. It is a lock if Piper wants it. It's his if he wants it, right? They could have said like they're holding the main event slot for Piper if he wants it.
Right. Okay. Time for our next matchup. Hugh Morris versus Chris Benoit. Tony says, he's feeling good about being a part of WCW. These two went after each other again. They fire away with some good strikes. Morris hits a clothesline to the back of the head. Bobby says he can't wait to hear Hogan snore once again. Big power slam from Hugh Morris. Tony asked if there's any way to get in touch with Piper tonight. So again, like they're not saying it's a slam dunk, I guess. A stiff clothesline from Benoit, an aggressive kick out from Hugh Morris. He goes for the no laughing matter, but misses. Benoit goes for the headbutt, and then we get a mystery woman hopping the rail. They call her a fan on commentary. Woman screams at her, "What are you doing here?" Security and Dillinger get in between. They send the woman out. While all this is going on, Kevin Sullivan's in the ring. He hits Benoit with the wooden chair as a receipt for what he got hit with the wooden chair the week before. The mystery woman smiles at Kevin Sullivan, and they walk to the back while Jimmy Hart is confused. They do an interview, but we'll get to that. How did you think the match debut and everything else was? What did I end up going for this? 2.25 maybe. I have to look. I thought it was half.
I was starting half. I mean, it wasn't even much of a match, honestly, until the whole thing with the mystery woman comes in. Woman clearly recognizes her. They're arguing into the finish with Sullivan, and them leaving together. So I think it made sense to introduce a new concept to this feud because it's been the same for so long. Having Sullivan now have like a woman of his own to combat woman and show that he's moved on and now he's going to take her out, like I think makes sense. I like Tony's tease too. Like he says, watch all weekend because we may break news of Piper's response. So it's a good little low key way to try and get people to tune into Saturday night, etc. Obviously we're not going to break the news there, but at least maybe put in your head that they
worldwide.
Yeah, you never know. The pro. So star and a half for the match. But yeah, you want to get to the interview?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll say like this woman's Jacqueline, would be Jacqueline. Miss Texas is what you would know her from if you were watching. I had no familiarity with her when she came on, but was interesting. Also interesting, we're about to get to a debut kind of like this on the WWF side. I think it's interesting that like WCW, like, did they know? Because Curtis Hughes was already out by this point,
Right.
right? His one appearance, and so it's kind of interesting how they beat him to the punch. Anyway, interview with Gene. He asks who this woman is. Kevin says none of your business. Kevin says they do know each other. Gene asks how well. Kevin says that's the pass. Jimmy, like we've
Smells
mentioned,
like trouble.
not a fan.
Smells like trouble.
Smells
Women in
like trouble.
WCW are
Says,
only problems. Only problems.
yeah, look what happened with the Horsemen, with Deborah and Woman. He says he's watching Days of Our Lives, and he's been there before. The mystery woman says, trouble, trouble. I stayed away, but I couldn't. When Nancy hit you over the head with that chair, that was it. 10 years ago, you made a decision that was a big mistake. I will never do you like that. Sullivan backs up Jimmy's concern and says, yeah, I mean, there has been a lot of drama going on around here with the women lately. She then says, don't say her name and don't put me in the same category as Woman and Deborah. She says Nancy looked like a fugitive from the fat farm. She
What are all these
calls
fat jokes
Deborah
for poor woman? It's ridiculous.
a bleach blonde bimbo and wears long dresses because she has legs like a chicken. Jimmy, come here, honey. You were the greatest manager today, but you can't give him what I could give him. Tony, when she says that line, has a great like commentary.
Gene is shook
you know,
too. He's like he's rattled.
Yeah. So she's kind of giving him comfort and a rub down as they head to the back. So an interesting, they're obviously insinuating that Sullivan picked Woman over this now mystery woman, and now she's kind of come back into the picture to provide him comfort.
I like it. I think it made sense to add that extra piece. The promo's fine. I mean, Jimmy with his 1950s, him and Larry still living in 1953. But it was fine beyond that. And it's the usual Sullivan mysterious stuff. And I don't think this was because of what was going to happen with Hunter. I think this was probably planned for them to bring in a woman like this. And I mean, I was familiar with Miss Texas a little bit just from PWI and stuff because she was pretty prominent USWA and stuff. Yeah. So like they talk about her quite a bit and her fighting men. Like it was a kind of a big deal in the mid 90s that she was fighting with men in Memphis and stuff.
So time for our main event. Ted and Vincent are out with Eric and Hogan this time. Hogan gets on the mic. He's more pissed than he was the earlier, now that they've made this Piper announcement. He says no one tells him what to do. He'll beat Giant one more time, bring Piper out too. He says he'll take a handicap match. So that was interesting. Again, an interesting approach, but so basically like Giant comes out, he immediately Vincent attacks him. So it's a 2-on-1 attack. Giant throws Vincent out of the ring. He rams Hogan's head into the turnbuckle, gives him some chops. He chokes him with the boot, which was a very cool camera angle where you can see how big Giant's foot is, and it was large. Hogan goes to the eyes. He mounts a little bit of offense, gets a clothesline in the corner, but Giant responds with some chops and forearms, backbreaker. Vincent puts Hogan's legs on the ropes. On commentary, I thought this was a decent note where they're talking about, why doesn't the Giant just go for the choke slam? And Tony admits, like, he knows if he calls for it, that's going to send out the troops.
Right.
But eventually, like, Vincent's in the ring and he clothesline him out. Then he sets up the choke slam. Bischoff gets in the ring, has a hilarious, like, firing double X hammers to the back of Giant to no avail. Giant grabs Bischoff, and now here comes out the outsiders. We saw none of the NWO B squad on this show.
Yeah,
I didn't realize
either. And they were all in Iowa. Buff. We know they were there.
They were all in Iowa. There's no Buff. There's no Wall Street. There's no Norton. There's no Bubba. Like it's very interesting here. So Giant grabs Bischoff. Out comes the Outsiders. The Giant gets beat down until Lex Luger comes in the ring. He's wearing a WCW Monday Nitro shirt. And we go off the air with Giant standing next to Luger, looking like they're going to create a tandem and go after the Outsiders. Nothing physical happens, but they're standing side by side, and Luger's kind of made good on his promise from
a little
earlier.
bit, but they do try and tease just a bit because Luger's got the shirt on, and that's usually a tell. Like, because he has a Nitro shirt on, is he gonna rip it off, have the NWO shirt under it? And they're all kind of pointing at each other. So I don't know. Like they did, I think they left this trying to tease a little bit, just a little bit, that maybe Luger has like set up the Giant and is actually in the NWO.
I think them not getting physical was good. I thought the shirt, whether it was strategic or not, it was a sleeveless kind of muscle shirt. So
right, probably not.
I like that. Yeah.
He just never wears. He wrestled, or why would he have the shirt on? Like I think they were trying to tease a little bit, like maybe there was the NWO shirt under there, but it was fine. Again, just a segment. I mean, I like the tease. I like, but this is just more of the same. Like this is why they need to be done with Hogan and Giant. Like it's been the same every time. On the pay-per-view, it's been a long plotting match with a non-finish or shaky finish. On TV, it's been this like random fight into the DQ. Like we're done. We don't. January's been Hogan Giant out. Like we're good. You knew what was coming, and I think we're starting to see it a little bit. Like one of the big criticisms of this era was, oh, you just know every main event people are conditioned to look to the aisle. Here comes the NWO, fuck finish, right? And are we starting to see the early vestiges of that here with this feud, where it seems like, okay, now the NWO keeps coming out, attacking Giant, DQ in the main event. Like this starts to become the trend that becomes a weekly thing for a while. So we'll see. This might just be a blip, but I don't know if we're actually starting that run yet or not.
Right.
All right. And get to our awards.
Yep.
All right, let's do Nitro first. Match of the night, I had a Guerrero and Jarrett.
Nitro first, right? Yeah, Guerrero, Jarrett.
The moment I went with Tony announcing him announcing Piper's title shot was good. It's always Bischoff firing Anderson, though. I don't know. What are you going with?
I actually think there's three contenders because I really like Hogan's promo too. I'm going with the Bischoff firing of Randy.
That's all. I'm going to change mine to that. Yeah. All right, Anderson. MVP, I went with the Outsiders. They were great in the booth, especially Hall, but Nash had those funny lines. Then they had the dominant match against the Extreme. They interfere at the end. So I thought this is kind of their night.
Good I think this is a strong night for the key proponents of the NWO. I could go Hogan here. I thought it was a good night for him. Mm-hmm. I actually think it was a very strong night for Bischoff too, but I'll second the Outsiders. They were really good too, and featured like they should have been on the pay-per-view.
All right. I don't have any shots fired, and debuts we had. Pearl Powers, Darling, Storm, Jacqueline. Should be called Jacqueline, right? It's Texas. Road Report was in Memphis. The Extreme used the Hollywood Blondes theme. This is a solid episode. It really did feel like a reset. We had those really good segments that carried it, but everything else was kind of whatever. Like no real big in-ring action to carry things. I don't want to say it was a holdover episode because stuff did happen, but it felt like a palate cleanser / table setter. So I went 6.5 out of 10. Like I think we've seen better, but it was a very good episode.
Yeah, I'm very high on this episode. Actually, I thought I wouldn't say there was like anything that was groundbreaking. I kind of feel like I'm the same with you, but it was very enjoyable for me to watch. And I thought stuff made more sense, at least, than what we had before. Like even something like the Dean Malenko squash, it was like, okay, well, Dean's been on a roll. This continues that. So like that's like a breadcrumb of his old story, but it's still something. And Sullivan beating Gomez is literally 2 minutes. That again was like the only thing I think could just be completely removed from this show and it wouldn't matter. Right. So I went 7.5. I mean, to me, this is like a really good match, like a hidden gem match away from what I'd call a great episode. I really enjoyed this episode.
All right, Raw awards for match of the night. I went with the main event, Godwins versus Vader and Mankind.
Yeah, I'm a Bulldog and LaFon or Furnace. So, yeah.
Best moment, I just went with the Final Four hype interview segment.
Yeah. I don't really. I mean, the only other thing I think you might could consider was Ahmed stuffing Dundee in the truck.
Like or maybe seconds. Mankind hitting Vader with the chair. Like that was okay. MVP was Austin to me. I thought he was great in that promo, and again, it feels like the biggest star on the show by far.
Yeah.
Shots fired. We had Vince shitting on Robin Hood. He says Robin Hood has weak arms. Vince also takes a shot at has-beens. He also says no bait and switches on the title matches. So I'm sorry, no, that's next week. Sorry. He shits on Robin Hood. That's it. So I was looking at the wrong notes.
No.
Wow. There's a lot of shots fired coming to Royal Rumble Raw, so there's a tease.
I think anyway, and considering they kind of bait and switch the actual Rumble itself,
shits on Robin Hood. Final grade for me, I went 5.5 out of 10. I was a little above average. I like the Final Four interviews. I didn't mind the main event, the Vader Mankind stuff. We talked through some of the issues they have, but whatever. Kind of a middling finale to the 1 hour old school Raws.
Yeah, I thought this was an appropriate end to the 1 hour Raw, so I'm going to give it a pretty bad rating because I didn't like a whole lot on this show. 4.5. Nothing that made me very offended, but certainly nothing that got me super excited either. So good riddance, 1 hour Raw.
All right, we'll see if they turn the tide in the Sky Dome next week. All right, combo awards. I had clean sweep for Nitro, I'm sure. Best show's Nitro.
It's gonna be back. Yeah.
Best match, Guerrero and Jarrett. Best moment, Bischoff firing Randy Anderson. Better commentary is obviously Nitro.
This was another big, I think, show for the commentary.
Yeah,
like I thought like this was a good one for Nitro because they had to do a lot. Like there was a lot of segments involving them.
And the Outsiders are great, and then so was Tony and crew as well, carrying everything. Plus the Piper moment was told through commentary. Star of the night, I just put the NWO here. Like it sounds like we love Bischoff, the Outsiders, Hogan. Like they all had a great night.
And as we talked, it was only the A team too. So
right. Ratings winner Nitro.
Yeah, not much to discuss. Everything kind of stayed the same. So in the prior week, Nitro was 3.7, Raw was a 2.2. This week, Raw's a 2.2 again, so stayed exactly the same. Nitro goes down to a 3.6, so essentially the same.
All right, so that'll do it for us here tonight. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Raw from the Sky Dome, Royal Rumble Raw. We'll see again. It'll be our first 2 hour episode. We'll see how that goes. And then Nitro as well will be from the Mid-South Coliseum. We'll see as they continue to ramp towards SuperBrawl. They get a few episodes of Nitro to go until we get there. So be sure to subscribe to everything North-South Connection has to offer. We appreciate you checking us out. That's Chad. I'm JT. We're out. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Smell the napalm.